Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be part 9 of the Breaking Point series. This fic is entitled Toxic Thoughts. Here's the summary. This is peeks into the sessions that Bako has to go through in order to stay in the hero course at UA. This is absolute bullshit, he shrieked as he flopped down onto the couch that was situated in front of Hound Dog's chair. This is shitty Deku's fault, I just know it. No, this is your fault, actually. The pro growled out as he took a seat on the armchair that he brought in so that he was on level with those who came into his office. His desk was only there for him to do his paperwork, not to speak with the students and other heroes that came to see him. Having that degree in psychology was something he would never regret getting. Huh? The blonde glared at the muzzled hero, trying to make sense of those words in a way that would make sense to him, like he'd never been told that it was his fault and that it was everyone else's. Which, honestly, Hound Dog was sure that was exactly what had happened. He had read the files on both boys, trying to figure out how he was going to help both get to a place that they needed to be a hero. Just from the small, minute interaction with the boy already, he realized it would be a long road ahead for him. You see, the way you've treated Midorya since you entered this school has been less than acceptable. He leveled up the pad in his hand and held it out toward the boy. He knocked it aside, ignoring the security of the battle training with All Might and the other extras of the snarls and growls in the hallways and the shouting toward all those around him. I don't give a shit about your fucking opinion. You should, because it'll be my opinion on whether or not you stay here in UA or get expelled. That shut Bako up, and the boy had glowered. You see, you're here for anger management, to learn to control and direct that excess energy into something more productive than bullying another student. It's not bullying! That had the blonde up on his feet with a snarl on his face. I've never once bullied anyone in my fucking life. Then what do you call your interactions with Midorya? The pro hero leaned back in his seat and watched the other, wondering what all he could glean from the teen as he had raged. Maybe he would even figure out a way for those conversations to go, and to get him into a position that was better. Putting the shit stain in his place was the snarl that was given, and made something in the pro clench tightly, remembering the muzzles and leashes wrapping around his mouth and neck, to keep him in his place, like the animal he was. He brought himself out of it so that he could look the blonde in the eye. And what place would that be? Below those with powers and quirks, with the dirt and shit where he sniveled since we were kids. The venom that was spat out just made Inui's skin get goosebumps. Midorya has a quirk, though. He can rival you in power, even. He knew this. He'd seen the footage of the kid leaping and jumping with his new control of his quirk. Even before that, he'd seen the power of the quirk, and what it had done during the sports festival. Fucking Deku was quirkless for the first fucking 14 years of his shitty, useless life. He was the damned stepping stone that I was using to get where I am now. So you used him to be a bully. Got it. He stated calmly as he made notes on the emphasis of quirklessness. He'd have to address the discrimination there, but first, he had to do something else. Derail the temper tantrum that was brewing. Tell me, Bako, what do you think therapy is? He was genuinely interested in this question, but also he knew that he needed to trip the kid up, keep him from raging. Switching topics rapidly normally worked pretty well, and it did. It caused the teen to stall for a solid 20 seconds before huffing and falling back onto the couch. To change me. Make me into something I'm not. His mind shifted toward Best Genus, the hero that he'd interned with, the man who tried to forcibly change him, and he was pretty sure that therapy would do the same thing. Change what about you, though? Your personality, your likes, dislikes, maybe the way you act entirely. Is that what you think will happen? He leaned forward, watching the teen as he fidgeted. You think I'm here to correct everything that is wrong with you? He did the air quotations around the word to make sure the other knew there was more to it. Isn't that what I'm here for? For you to fix the fucking shit that the damn hobo hates about me? He leaned back on the couch, and Ted spread his arms, crossed over his chest. It was a defensive position and moved to get away and protect himself. He'd seen the teen be nothing but defensive and ready for a fight since he stepped into the room. No, I'm not here to rewrite your entire personality. He chuckled at the disbelieving look from the teen before continuing. Your personality is something you were born, grew, and developed on your own for the most part. I can't change the fact that you might like Katsudon instead of a meat bun. I can't change the fact that your favorite color might be red instead of yellow. Your personality is what makes you who you are. It's not something I want to change. Then what is the fucking point of me being here if it's not to change me? That's the question now, isn't it? No, I'm not here to change you on a personal base. I'm here to help you control your emotions, and how to emit them safely for yourself and those around you. I don't do feelings. Inui gave a snarled smile at the snarled frown that was given to him. Well, you are now, or you can leave, including leaving UA. The boy stayed where he was. Now we'll start with that anger of yours and go from there. I told you to write a letter explaining your feelings, not to confront him about them and try to apologize. Inui could only stare incredulously at the blonde kid in front of him. How could a kid take his advice and do the exact opposite of what he said? I thought I'd just get straight to the point of the problem, he growled out with a shake of his head. How was I supposed to know he'd react like that? You'd know if you'd listened to anything that I explained the last time I talked to you. Yeah, well, apparently it was bullshit anyways, because he just fucking hates me more than before. The pro sighed as he rubbed his forehead. This was supposed to be a meeting about what had happened with the League, but the kid seemed hardly affected by that and more what had happened between him and Midorya, though he commended Bako in trying to fix things by apologizing. It was neither the time nor the right way to do so, though. Look, what you said isn't the truth. It was! Bako growled back as he paced back and forth in front of him. It was my truth, that I wanted to give the shitty nerd. It may be a truth, but it wasn't the full truth. He stressed as the blonde had turned those angry crimson eyes onto him. We've barely touched on this since we've had a couple of meetings, but you can't honestly tell me that you did all that just to protect him. There was much better ways to go about it than that, and you know it. He held his ground as he met the kid's glare head-on, waiting to see if he would submit or fight. The kid eventually grumbled and settled back into his seat with his arms crossed. Fuck you. He sighed with that shake of his head. Yeah, now let's see if we can't get to the truth of the matter of this and figure out how you're going to handle it from there. So, your mother. When did she start hitting you? Inui huffed as he looked at his notes. The dorms had been built, and the teachers had all given him reports on the students and their parents. It was all written down in their files, and Bakugo was no different. Fuck you. The old hag never laid a goddamn hand on me. The snarl ripped out of the blonde. The way the explosions ripped through the air, it caught the pro's attention almost immediately. His shoulders were hunched forward, the palms of his hands facing outwards toward the counselor, so he knew how defensive this was going to make the kid. Oh, not even once. He had thought that was what Aizawa had meant when he said the kid had been abused. There was more than one type of abuse, of course, but with the reaction he was providing, he was worried there was more to it. With the way that you're acting at the moment, you would think that she had. Crimson eyes narrowed at that, unsure of how to respond, though in truth the hag hit him before, on several occasions. Though most didn't leave a mark, there had been a few that had, mostly those from when he'd been hit by that fucking wooden spoon or unable to duck the plates or bottles that were thrown at him, but when he got older, he got faster, able to dodge all of them later. He'd taken the slaps easily enough, as they didn't leave a mark on him anymore. Between having built up a tolerance and the capabilities of nitroglycerin on personal skin, his skin was smooth all around now. Not even punches from training could leave marks anymore, wiped away by a squirk. Only hits hard enough to break his jaw or knock a tooth out would leave a mark, so really, those slaps he got from the hag were next to nothing. What's that got to do with anything? He growled. Inui could have smirked at the dodge. As amateur as it was something he would allow, especially since he was going to lead this meeting in a more school-like subject. Have you ever heard about nature versus nurture debate? Those crimson eyes narrowed further as the teen leaned forward subconsciously, unsure of where this conversation was going to go. Isn't that some piece of shit for psychologists? Yes, it's part of psychology, correct, but there's more to it. He tilted his head as he thought about how to explain this topic and how the blonde would take it. The debate is mostly about genetic or learned influences and how it affects an individual's behavior. Like how I might have inherited my mom's hair when my skin was affected by the sun. He wasn't in the top 5 for nothing. He could take a new subject and convert it in a way that he would understand in only a moment's notice. Something like that, yes, but in this case, it's based on how you might be naturally intelligent and analytical from your father's side, a genetic inheritance known as nature. Then there's how your mother might yell and curse and you've picked that up from her, or a learned behavior that leans more toward nature. He sets the clipboard to the side so he could lace his hands together and leaned forward himself. The blonde himself was chewing on his lip as he thought it over. Why is it a debate? That was something that was bugging him. Why was it a debate when both sounded rather likely? His behavior was inherited in a way, a short temper that resembled his mother, but he also had his father's analytical mind. But he also knew that he cursed and yelled more because his mom cursed and yelled in front of him, so both had a strong stance that could be right. Well, that would be because not everyone agrees. He tilted his head in thought. When taken to the extremes, Some think it's because of nature, a pre-wiring of sorts in a person's mind that makes them the way they are. Like how some argue that a pedophile is hardwired to like children, or that a sociopath is wired to lack emotional responses. They'll blame a lot of things on genetics, try to weed out things that way. He tapped his hands on his knee to gather his thoughts. Others believe that it's all learned behavior from their surroundings, like a child learns to be kind from their parents, while others learn to be mean when they're under abuse or from those around them. That's how killers and murderers are made, as well as rapists, con artists, and villains. They're all a product of how they were treated and taught from their surroundings. But that doesn't make any damn sense, Bako growled as he ran a hand through his hair. If it was all genetics, then Shitty Icy Hot would be a piece of shit like his father, or Shitty Hair would have gone into cooking instead of heroics. He didn't like the thought. But then again, if it was all from the shitty surroundings, then Deku would have been a jackass as bad as I am, or even worse. And there lays the problem. Neither are right nor wrong. They hold strong stances and sound reasoning as long as they aren't taken to the extreme. Both are right in a sense that you are affected by an extent, but that they aren't the end-all be-all. He watched as the blonde thought over the information. So, for your homework assignment, I'd like for you to start a notebook and write down behaviors that you have that could be either learned or inherited. I'd also like for you to take your time and really think on it, from childhood to now. The teen's brows furrowed as he thought before huffing angrily. Whatever. He had a few extra notebooks, so he'd go ahead and do that. Be truthful about all your behaviors, Bakugo. I want you to go over everything, from your temper, intelligence, pride, and ego. Everything. Don't hold back. He made sure to end it with a growl of warning. Yeah, I got you stupid mutt. I'll fucking think it over. He knew he could only hope that the teen would take this seriously. I heard about the licensing exam. You failed. Fucking hell, I know that already. Fuck you and fuck that shitty exam. He knew he raised a brow at the explosive blonde. He knew the blonde would take this hit to his ego hard, just like he had written in his notebook that he had gone through, and the blonde was used to always doing things right the first time, always being first, always being praised. That school hadn't done him any favors. Not that Bakugo had fully realized it yet, but he was getting there. Have you thought about why you failed the exam? When that shitty piece of paper, it was because of rude mannerisms while rescuing and telling civilians to save themselves. Fucking hell. It was a shitty reason to fail. The blonde was raging, and explosions were popping from his hands, but they were smaller than normal. Made the pro want to laugh, which he held back because that was so Bakugo. The student would do that, and most likely in the rudest way possible. As well, he wished that he could get the tapes to that and see how it actually went down, because he was sure that there were more hilarious content to it than he thought. Either way, he'd leave that for later. It was best to start on the topic for today. Do you think any of the learned behaviors is at fault here, or is it because of your inherited ones? Right back to the nature versus nurture topic, something he really wanted Bakugo to focus on so that they could separate the good from the bad. Probably the impatience, he grumbled as he scowled down at his lap, arms crossed over his chest. And the fucking temper. He scoffed at that and stamped a foot. Impatience is learned. My temper's inherited. He hadn't always been impatient. He'd used to wait for Deku to speak all the time, his stutter making a sentence twice as long as needed. It had all disappeared once he got his quirk, and was given anything that he wanted almost instantly, and he didn't need to wait. He got his temper from his mother, who was just a naturally angry and rude person, much like Katsuki had become. Good. Now we're going to explain why those things weren't the best things to lean toward in that situation. The blonde grumbled and lowered his head. It was either he wasn't sure how to phrase it, or because he didn't understand why it was a bad thing. Which would be his guess. He had been given the files from Nezu on both Midorya and Bakugo. He knew the two's class and the way that they were treated in middle school thanks to the investigation done by the principal. The boy growled before huffing. The impatience didn't help because the hero has to be calm. They have to understand that civilians aren't used to long treks and could be slow, especially when injured. He let his head tilt to the side as he continued. The temper is generally bad because you can't be frustrated with civilians, let alone when out in a battle. You could make a mistake or injure someone. Both are good observations, yes, along with the impatience and the temper. Your quick observations and sharp tongue are also bad in that situation. Most civilians require soft words and comfort. And observations are good, but you can't jump to conclusions based off of a few seconds. Yes, making quick decisions are important on the field, but don't use the information to build a conclusion you like. They might not have been horribly injured, but they might not have had the pain tolerance to continue on with those injuries, or could have had internal injuries that you couldn't see. For once, The blonde nodded, his head in understanding. He could see that those qualities, while sometimes good, are not always the best. Now, I want you to work on improving those qualities in a way to benefit you. And he placed the notebook that he had already gone over with the notes inside back in front of the boy. This notebook will remain with you. I'll no longer be looking inside of it. This is for you to reflect on the day and your reactions to the situations. He gave the teen a stern look. Think it over carefully. With each situation, when you write it down, think about when you write it down and what other options you could have done. The teen huffed with a couple pops of explosions, but nodded his head. Fucking fine already. He nodded and gave out a happy growl. Now, let's try some meditation techniques to try and control that temper of yours. I said write the things down in a notebook, not get in a fight with the person you were sent to therapy for. Anyway, couldn't help but howl as he sent a glare at the bandaged-up student. Fuck you, I needed to fight the shitty nerd. Bako glared back at the canines, growling right along with the dog's own. He fucking knew things I needed to damn well know, you shitty mutt. I don't give a care. You threw everything that we've talked about to the side and did exactly something I would have frowned upon, not to mention, could have gotten yourself expelled if Aizawa wasn't being lenient. He howled again, as he slammed his hand down on the table between them. You've taken nothing that I've given you and used it to improve. I should have just expel you now. I made the teen pause as he stared in horror at the pro-hero. He apparently hadn't thought that this could show that he was making no progress, despite it only being a couple of months. He should have made somewhat of an improvement, but instead he tossed it all to the side. Hound Dog huffed a deep breath as he flopped back into his chair, rubbing at his forehead to try and get rid of the headache that was popping up. Why would you confront him like that? Given you tools to help deflect poor decisions, but you used none of them. You allowed your emotions to control you in a way that was similar to your middle school years. It made the teen startle as he snapped to look at the mutt. The fuck do you mean, my middle school years? The principal started an investigation into your middle school not too long ago to find out why Midorya is the way he is. He rolled his shoulders. We've noticed worrying things and behaviors from both you and Midorya, so the investigation began. The things that we've uncovered so far, they're, well, more unsettling than I thought it would be. The blonde shifted, but refused to sit back down. Instead, he stayed standing as he watched the pro-hero heave heavily, as if he was being crushed beneath a weight that no one should bear. Thinking about his middle school years and comparing to what he'd learned and been told was acceptable here in UA, well, he could understand the weight. He hadn't been the greatest person in middle school, and he did recognize that fact now, especially since he had friends, at least he thought they were. Shitty hair, raccoon eyes, knockoff Pikachu, and soy sauce face were all individuals that he didn't see as extras. They always had his back, called him out on his shit, even when he got angry. So he could recognize the way he acted in middle school wasn't the way he should have, but there was little he could do now. Give me a reason why I shouldn't just call you a lost cause now. The hero sat up and stared at the child in front of him, watching as his head lowered and his fist clenched tightly at his side. He could hear the clenching and the grinding of his teeth, the smell of burnt sugar filling the air around them. If the blonde lost control now, he'd just expel him and be done. He was not about to be attacked by a brat that thought he was better than a pro. But then the smell dissipated. Didn't completely disappear, but it lessened. He watched the teen fall back into his seat, and his hands fell to the side limply. His eyes were just staring up at the ceiling as his entire body read exhausted. I can't give you a reason. He spoke a moment later. I know that I've been an asshole. There's no denying that, especially after last night. The silence grew between the two for several moments, worrying the pro despite his anger. But I thought I was getting a little better, was whispered out. I still lash out. I can't really figure out my emotions that well, but I don't feel like I hate everything. That pinged something in Inui, and his eyes narrowed at the teen. What do you mean by that? Hate everything? The teen scowled as he refused to look at him, probably so that he could get his thoughts in order or just hide his emotions, which he was prone to do no matter what the pro said. I don't know when it started, but all I really remember growing up is just hate. I've hated people for as long as I can remember. Didn't matter who it was. My parents, classmates, teachers, and even fucking Deku and Auntie. I've just always hated them. And you can't remember when this started, or why? This was something he could work with, something that they could unravel and maybe even make a breakthrough with this kid. This could be the reason that he stayed. A shrug was his answer. All I know it was before I turned 4. Fucking started screaming my shitty head off at everything then. This was something he'd have to research, but Inui now had a theory that could end up helping the teen out. It was something that he himself had gone through as a child, but by no means gave an excuse for the other. It was something that attributed to his attitude, nothing more than that. I see. I think we'll end this here today. I want you to write in your notebook about your fight with Midorya, the emotions and thoughts you had, and the actions that coincided with them. I'm not expelled, then? The blonde finally looked back at the therapist with raised brows. He obviously thought it was the end for him here. That's right. You'll stay enrolled in UA till I say otherwise. Not even Izal will be able to kick you out unless I give the okay, so I suggest continuing these sessions to help you continue on your road to heroism. Fine. Whatever you say, you damn mutt. He took the smirk sent his way and gave a low, gravelly growl in return. So, he sat in his chair staring at the child in front of him. It had taken much too long to get the teen in here, and it was a concern, especially with what had recently just happened with the possible work study. What questions do you have about what exactly therapy involves? The emerald eyes that took him in were narrowed, and Inui shuddered at the way he was being broken down, because there was no way that stare meant anything else. He'd seen it on Nezu one too many times to not believe that that was what was happening. Are you going to make me talk about everything? No, he instantly denied as he leaned back in his chair. This is a place for you to talk about the things that you're comfortable doing so. I will not force you to talk about anything, though I will attempt to bring it up to speak about it, but if you're uncomfortable about talking about something, then all you need to do is tell me. The green-haired teen watched the pro for a very long moment, assessing his words and the truth to them. It almost made the dog-like hero bare his throat in submission, an instinct that had been unfortunately built into him when he came into the employment of Nezu. All right, then. Where should we start? Inui smiled as he leaned forward, clasping his hands together as he settled his elbows on his knees. How about we start by getting to know each other? My name is Inui, and I'm terrified of leashes. The green-eyed blinked in surprise before giving a tentative smile back at the man. I'm Izuku, and I'm scared of fireworks. It wasn't going to be easy. Inui knew this as he began the first session with Midorya Izuku, but he felt that he could help the child and his counterparts, because both kids deserved a chance to heal and to grow, no matter their circumstances or past. All right, everyone. This concludes Part 9 of the Breaking Point series. Hope you guys are still enjoying this series. Part 10 will be next, and as always, thank you so much for listening.